Greetings, and welcome to the Greenville Junction Depot Historical Tour. In 1889, the Canadian Pacific Railway completed its short line across Maine, connecting Montreal to Saint John, New Brunswick, giving the railroad access to an open water port in winter, as well as access to the Canadian Maritimes. This made Canadian Pacific a true transcontinental railway. At milepost 259 on the short line, on the shore of beautiful Moosehead Lake, the railroad erected a depot in Greenville Junction that still stands to this day. The first passenger train arrived at Greenville Junction Depot on June 6, 1889. Joseph Crandall was the engineer. This elegant Victorian station was built to accommodate wealthy summer visitors coming to the lodges and famed hotels on Moosehead Lake, considered then as it is today to be a sportsman's paradise. Under the Witch's Cap roofline is the ladies' waiting room. This was reserved for lady travelers, having a separate entrance and a small ticket window into the office. From here, couples left for honeymoons in Montreal, or trips to India, or just a trip up the road to Jackman to visit a relative. Between the 1890s and the mid-1940s, the famous silk trains sped by the depot on the short line. These trains transported valuable silk from Vancouver to East Coast mills and ships in New Brunswick. To avoid robberies and lower insurance costs, the silk trains were given the highest priority and stopped only to change locomotives. Even the King of England's royal train was sidelined as silk trains raced by. The waiting room remains mostly unaltered since construction. The original seats, windows, and trim remain intact. The ticket office separated the general waiting room and the ladies' waiting room. It retains the official Canadian Pacific pea green colors. A retired station master pointed out the false bottom drawer which was used to hide spirits. The pilot of a Canadian mail plane, which crash-landed nearby on Christmas Eve, writes of a cold Christmas night spent sipping bourbon with the station agent. Railroad operations are dependent upon the section crews for track maintenance. Today, a single crew could be expected to maintain hundreds of miles of track, but back in the days of pump cars and hand trucks, one crew maintained just 6 miles. The depot was home to one of these crews for many years. Eventually, the pump cart was replaced by the velocipede, and then the motor cart, and then the pickup truck. Eventually, local section men disappeared altogether. At one time, Greenville Junction represented the union between the Canadian Pacific Railway and the Bangor and Aroostook Railroad. The freight shed had doors that opened on both sides. Legend has it that during Prohibition, liquor came down on the Canadian Pacific, was offloaded into the freight shed, relabeled, and put aboard the Bangor and Aroostook. The freight shed agent is purported to have died a very wealthy man. Canadian troop trains frequently stopped at the Greenville Junction Depot. Most of these troops were heading from Canada to Brunswick to be loaded on troop ships to be shipped off to Europe. Returning soldiers would toss out foreign coins and other trinkets to the local kids. Because of the strategic importance of the short line, especially during winter time, a contingent of soldiers were stationed in Greenville to protect the tracks, trestles, and local railroad equipment from sabotage. For a time, the depot was only a flag stop, and local passengers would have to wave a flag at an oncoming train to get it to stop and pick them up. In 1993, the Canadian Pacific Railway put the short line up for sale. When no buyer came forward, the Canadian Pacific began the formal process of applying to abandon the entire route. The last passenger train to stop at the depot was Via's Atlantic on December 16, 1994. No longer needed for passenger service, the depot building fell into disuse and disrepair. In 2008, Maine Preservation listed it as the most endangered historical building in the state of Maine. In 2010, a group of interested local people came together to figure out how they could save the depot. The building was cleaned and stabilized. In 2011, the nonprofit Greenville Junction Depot Friends was incorporated. A series of fundraisers have been initiated to raise money to complete the rehabilitation of the building to become a community center for the town of Greenville, Maine. The Greenville Junction Depot is one of the last remaining original railroad structures in all of New England. To find out how you can contribute to its restoration, check us out online at greenvilledepot.org. Together, we can save this beautiful, unique, and historic structure for another generation to enjoy. Thank you for taking the depot tour with us today, and follow our progress on Facebook at Save the Depot in Greenville Junction, Maine.